So let's start, though, with another prayer. The Lord be with you.
Also
And
with you.
also with you.
Let us pray. Oh God, you call this church of ours into ways to relate to one another, to be both local and national and of the wider church. Bless this time of learning. Bless this time of communication, that we may know you better as expressed in our church that has blessed so many people over the years, the Episcopal Church. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay, and Roger, I suspect that Sue is next to
Yes, she
me.
is.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, let me quickly give you an idea of what we're going to do today, or at least the agenda I have, or the plan I have. First is we're going to talk about what a diocese is and why do we use that term? What does it mean? And a little bit about the Diocese of Vermont. I want to talk about something that we also talked about last week, and that is the what's called the Chicago Quadrilateral. Oh, I can never say the name. And
Quadriennial.
yes, thank you. And that's in the prayer book and the historical documents that guides us in building relationships with other churches, other denominations, which we are in. And I want to share about those. I want to talk about piety, meaning how we pray and how prayer shapes us. So a little bit more about the prayer book and why we do what we do. Some of you have been a part of our conversation on Sundays, and that will tie in some of that. So please do chime in. And then what bishops by ballot means, and the shift away from our historic tradition as the Church of England into the American Church, and how that deeply reflects who we are as the Episcopal Church in the United States of America, or at least the Episcopal Church as we continue to change our names, and how that shapes and forms us as a denomination. So that's what we're going to be focusing on, those bullet points for today. Do any of you have questions about that? And first, I should say a quick recap of anything in the past. Any questions? Anything? Does that sound good for today?
Yeah.
Okay. So last week we looked at the Anglican Communion. We looked at the church much wider than ourselves, and history in the denomination from the Revolutionary War into the 20th century. So today, up until essentially the 1979 prayer book, using those demarcations as our day, an Anglican Communion. So there's just so much we could be talking about, and my hope is that we will continue in that as well. So, first of all, why a diocese? In the historic church, and I'm talking about since the medieval period, as the church started to organize itself beyond the parish church or the regional church of the very early place, right? I said there's a bishop, and then there was a congregation. And then those congregations, right, from local towns, people would walk for a day or two to get to church on a Sunday, live in community for a day, and then walk home and do this over and over again. So a bishop started to build congregations in these little villages throughout the Middle East, Greece, Italy. And then those and the southern Mediterranean, what is now Egypt and Libya, and those are the foundations of a diocese. One, a bishop is the primary. Two, and the primary preacher, teacher, and pastor, and that is central down to this day. The primary preacher, teacher, and pastor. And secondly, the so that's the first piece. The second piece is that the role of the presbyterate, that is the priest, the pastor, began to become necessary because the bishop could not be the priest and pastor and teacher in every congregation every Sunday. So, and the diaconate, the deacons, had begun. Here, let me see. It's a little bit easier for me.
You on a phone?
And so the diaconate really was raised up as the work of the people, supporting the people throughout the town, serving their needs, those specifically widows and orphans, as is reflected in the scriptures all over the place. And then the presbyterate, people like me, actually are secondary. We are nothing more, as certainly in those days, as a representative of the bishop and designed to be the sacramentalist within a community, meaning we baptize, we are those who said communion. And that really started to develop once the Constantinian church, once Constantine in 420 something or another began, and hasn't changed, which has its blessings and its curses. So the diocese is the first and foremost primary expression of the church, not the local parish church, because it is the bishop as the primary priest, teacher, and pastor. And even though it doesn't feel it today, that is still our theology. So last week I talked a little bit about the polity structure of the Episcopal Church, and everyone was there but Don and Wendelin. So let me give 2 seconds, okay? In the Episcopal Church, once the Revolutionary War took place, they didn't know what to do because there were no bishops. Because we're so bishop diocesan centric, there were no bishops in the colonies. And so there was this big scuttle. How do we get bishops ordained and consecrated? Because a bishop was required to make allegiance to the king, to the monarch. And of course, that couldn't happen. They were separate countries. Finally, they relented. They consecrated 3 bishops, sent them without allegiance to the king, sent them back to the United States. The United States set up a structure. First, they named themselves the Protestant Episcopal Church of the United States of America. That stayed as our legal name until about 25, 30 years ago. Secondly, we were able to then form dioceses. The Diocese of Connecticut and the Diocese of Pennsylvania were the first 2 dioceses of the church. They are the center of the founding of the Episcopal Church. Bishop Seabury in Connecticut and Bishop White in Pennsylvania. Our bishops still to this day are given literally, okay, this is both cool and idiotic. I don't know how else to use terms. They have a number. Every bishop is given a number, and that is the order of succession, right? So apostolic succession. So therefore, every bishop in the Episcopal Church is given a number, and that is the number in the line of bishops since Bishop White. Bishop White was number 1. And our bishop, Bishop Shannon, is 1,600, 1,060 and something. So we have this obsession, and I don't think it's always healthy. It is, however, who we are, of our bishop as the center, so that we even give them numbers.
Rick?
Yes.
About how long is it typical that a bishop stays in office for X amount of time? Is there any limitation?
Yes. Okay, let me first start by limitation. That's a good question. Up until I forget when the canons changed. So canon, right? Canon law is what defines the polity of the church. Okay. There was maybe 100 years ago a canon put into place that mandates retirement at the age of 72 for all orders of the church, bishops, priests, and deacons. What that means is a priest can no longer serve as a rector. They can serve as an assisting priest. They can serve as somebody that's not a rector, and they don't have the authority or the tenure a rector has. That's the first thing. The second thing is a bishop is equivalent. They can no longer serve as a diocesan, bishop. There's another level of bishops called suffragans, and I'll get to that. They can no longer serve as a suffragan bishop. And theologians, people in seminaries also must retire at the age of 72. Prior to about 125 years ago, we'll say somewhere near first quarter of this last century, you could serve until your death, and your death could be at 99. And they did, and on a number of times, being from Minnesota, the Bishop of Minnesota served from 1850, somewhere in that range, give or take 5 years, till 1903. So you could serve 40 years. Bishop Hopkins, the first bishop of Vermont, also served much longer than beyond his 72nd birthday. Okay, so bishops, and the word Episcopal, Episcopalian, is the Greek, is the English word for the Greek word episcopi, meaning bishop, that we get from the New Testament, the head of the church. So we weren't Protestant in that we weren't Lutheran or Calvin or the traditional continent, right? France, Germany, Switzerland, whatnot, Reformation churches that eliminated the bishop. They eliminated the bishop, so they could no longer be they didn't have the episcopi as a rejection of Rome at the time of the Reformation. But the English church did not reject, as we talked a lot about last week, the threefold orders of deacons, priests, and bishops. Kept that order, but were not Roman Catholic. We're still not under Rome, and will never be under Rome. And so we needed to identify that we are English and that we kept the Episcopal order, the bishops, but we are Protestant. So we named ourselves the Protestant Episcopal Church, meaning we're not under Rome, but we still have bishops as the center of the church, the historic center of the church since the New Testament time. There's a lot about bishops right there. Bishops have gone in favor, loved, not loved, seen as relevant and needed, seen as not relevant and not needed over the centuries. The Diocese of Vermont has, as all other dioceses have, some people no less than parish clergy love their parish clergy, don't love their parish clergy, or like or put up with, and all of those things. You will know.
All, we are people.
What's that?
After all, it comes down to we are people.
We are people. And so you will note I was going to have the webpage of the Diocese of Vermont up. And again, I deeply apologize. When our bishops come and visit these days, they wear, they have 5 what we call symbols of the episcopal office. Now, what's a symbol? So as a priest, my symbol is a stole. That's it, right? The colored stole that wraps around my neck. And that is the symbol of a pastor. Okay. Symbol of being a pastor, because it's the order of priests, order of the presbyterate, pastor of a congregation. That's where we get that from. And my symbol is the stole, and nothing else when it comes to an item to wear. Okay. The collar that I wear is custom, comes down from the High Middle Ages. The Episcopal Church, Roman Catholic Church, Lutheran, some Methodists still wear it. Many in the Black Christian churches in the United States will wear it as well, that are deeply connected to the Reformation. Many don't. Depends if they're more connected to the Baptist tradition. So custom, you're used to me in a black shirt, a white collar. That is customary. And it is mainly customary, not always, throughout the Anglican Communion, right? The worldwide church, but 90% of the churches do that. I think Australia is one that they often don't wear collars. If you're in a communist country, like the church in China, there is a subversive. It is subversive, right? Because it's illegal to be a Christian. They do not wear a collar because it sets them up, right, for jail, literally. But most clergy in the Anglican Communion do.
You do pastoral visits. Do you just wear your clerical collar, or do you wear the stole as well, or do you wear the stole at sometimes? I'm curious about that.
Sure. I usually forget my stole. Okay. So I usually don't. So folks
we just need a hook by the back door for you to hang your stole on.
Oh, believe me. But that's the only reason. It is traditional that a priest wear their stole in a pastoral visit. So yes, one of the changes that happened, and Don and Wendell, in a quick catch-up in the middle of the 19th century, there was this thing that began called the Oxford movement. And that started with one sermon by John Keble in 1833. And what ended up coming out of that was the 1979 Book of Common Prayer. And in the late 1800s, Episcopal and Anglican churches throughout the world started to put candles on altars. They were seen as Roman Catholic, Romish, Popish, Papish, and there was splits down this church, top to bottom, no less than over women's ordinations and the ordination of gays and lesbians today. That also, along with the candles, came colored vestments, a stole at first, and then the chasuble that we wear today. For bishops, it includes mitres and chasubles. Bishops in the Anglican tradition, especially on the American continent from the Revolutionary War, would never wear a mitre. It's too much like a bishop, a Roman bishop. Now, yes, Barbara.
I just don't know what is that other word you used? The start with a C, I think.
Chasubles.
I don't know.
It looks like the poncho, right? The color.
Okay.
Okay. It's called a chasuble, and it comes out of, for good or for ill, it's a representation of what a priest would wear at a sacrifice in the Old Testament and the beginning. And what it did, you'll excuse the goriness, is it would protect the priest's undergarments from any blood splattering, right, at the sacrifice of an animal, which were deeply embedded and required under the law that we hear in the Old Testament. You were to go sacrifice the lamb, the this, the that. And that's where that comes down from.
Okay.
So is it right that we still wear it? Well, there's reason and there's not reason. Our history, now that we recovered 150 years ago, is the reason that most Episcopal priests will wear one when they say the Eucharist, because it is a sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving. We say that. We no longer understand that it's a sacrifice of Jesus or a sacrifice of an animal. It is a sacrifice of our faith, that we give up self and we give our lives to God. And that's the symbol. It's a symbol, remember. It's a symbol of the role that a priest carries within, a priest or bishop carries in the community when they say Eucharist. Prior to this recovery of the colored vestments, you may have seen me during morning prayer. I wore my black, right? A black, it looked like a stole, and my academic hood. And I wore that at morning prayer because there's no sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving. So the English clergy always wore, I mean, we're talking from the Protestant Reformation, and before, if you weren't saying communion, the clergy would wear with the white, it's called a surplice, with the black, and it's called a preaching scarf. It identifies you as a preacher. And then your academic hood, identifying what degree you may or may not have. Doctoral students have, and those who hold doctorates have much more grand, oftentimes, hoods, academic hoods. Master's degree holders have a little bit more subdued. Mine, it's interesting, fits in the middle. It looks similar to a master's hood, but it's just physically bigger. It doesn't have a lot more of the ornamentation. And it's solely from the academy, because in the old days, and we carry this on, is that clergy must have advanced degrees. So again, you have the morning prayer look, and literally vestments, and the priesthood. And bishops wear different things as well. And I only want to talk about the 5. Bishop wears a mitre to identify their role first. And a mitre stands for the Holy Spirit, because a bishop is a line of the apostles, right? Remember that Peter is the Bishop of Rome. So you have and from the book of Acts, on 2nd chapter, the fire descended upon the apostles' heads, and a mitre is simply a representation of the fire of the Spirit resting on their heads. Think about chief priest, pastor, and teacher, line of apostolic succession. That symbol alone is the symbol of the fire on their heads, a biblical symbol. Secondly, coming out of the High Middle Ages is the ring. Literally a ring, a signet ring with the signet of the diocese that you serve. Today, and you would literally, especially in the old days, you would take your hand and put it into wax anytime you sent a letter, anytime a formal document is signed. Bishops still do that, but only in ceremonial ways. We no longer use signet rings to identify royal house. Well, in England they do. We certainly don't. So that's where that comes from. They carry their staff, right? Because they are the chief priest, the chasuble and the stole. Bishop, they've got their hat as well as teacher, and then they have their pastor. They have a shepherd's crook, okay? Because they are to guide us, and all of the New Testament theology around being the shepherd of God's people. The chapter 10 of John of the Gospel of John is where we get the theology of the shepherd. And so you have those three are the primary symbols. A hat, I always jokingly call them the hat, the stick, the ring. You also think of kissing a ring. That is real. That's the ring any priest would kiss. What's called a pectoral cross. In that you may have seen a bishop, our bishops will wear a big, huge cross on a very prominent chain. That's called a pectoral cross, that is given by the diocese to the bishop. And at the time of their consecration, as a symbol, again, of their faith in the crucified and risen Christ. And so you've got the faith, you've got the role of bishop, of the fire, you've got the shepherd's crook, of being the shepherd, this chief priest and shepherd. You've got the power, and it is, right, the ecclesial power of a ring, and then you have the priesthood in the vestments. So those are the five, I believe those are the five symbols. They wear different vestments than I do, a priest. We wear, think of morning prayer again, right? I wear the black, it's called cassock, and a white flowy, it's called a surplice. Bishops wear red, and they look a little bit different. And they're even more puffy. We are known as very much vestment-based people, a denomination, and so therefore the bishops have even different vestments and more grand-looking vestments than. Okay, there we go. Those are the symbols, the outward symbols. And again, you may have seen a bishop in a purple shirt, like I wear a black one. It is a symbol of they're known as, especially in the days of only male bishops, as the princes of the church. You may have heard that referred to in cardinals and other Catholic circles. We, in our own way, purple is the symbol of royalty. And our bishops are princes of the church. We do not name princesses of the church with the female bishops. We still say that royal role within the church.
Rick, I think it's very obvious when I saw a Lutheran bishop and the Bishop of the United States and the Episcopal Bishop of New York City, and the vestments were so entirely different.
Very different, right?
The New York City bishop looked nothing like Bishop Shannon. He was in glory. I mean, you should have seen the outfit on him. It was it was very Roman Catholic.
Well, yes and no. Very good observation. So the Lutheran bishops that I have seen, some wear mitres, some don't. And some wear chasubles or cope. You know what I wear on Christmas with all the Christmas or Easter with this jewel? It has jewels on the back. It has the gold in it, and then I remove it for saying communion and put on my normal, what we see as a chasuble. That's called a cope. Bishops are given those, and they wear them for consecrations when they make other bishops, anytime they're in a congregational worship, anytime they visit. And they're very ornate. The Lutherans that I have seen, let me first say, if they wear them, they are very, very simple.
Yeah.
The difference between Roman Catholic bishops is they have a number of additional symbols and a number of additional additions. They've got palliums that the Pope gives them, or they wear their what's called a zucchetta, right? Their purple hat, little it looks like we call them a beanie. Their name a zucchetta. They're come from the yarmulke, okay, as the head covering of the rabbi and other Jews, male Jews. That is where that comes from. The Pope wears a white one. Not all Episcopal bishops will wear a purple one. Some do. But it does lean, as I've talked about, the low church, high church, right? Low church will dress more like traditional Protestants. High church dress more like Roman Catholics, bishops. And so, yes, Barbara, you are absolutely right. Some most bishops have transitioned all their vestments in the Episcopal Church to everything I've described. When I was ordained a priest 25 years ago, there were still bishops that did not wear them. They would only wear what's called choir dress, like I said, the puffy white and red instead of a black. It's called a rach and shamir, as Protestants, raising up the word Protestant within our tradition. If you were at lessons and carols, and if you noted the bishop was wearing all of that regalia that is different than mine, but it is known as a rachet and shamir. And though they're still striking, they're much more simple than the cope and the mitre and the stick and the ring and the cross.
Well, she was red from head to toe, wasn't it? Was that
correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. So yes. So you have these symbols of office that elevate a bishop. Are they elevated? Yes, because that is the history of the Christian church from the New Testament times.
Rick,
yes.
as a kid in youth choir in two different choirs, one in New Haven, one in Ridgewood, New Jersey, all of we children wore a black black robe.
It's called a cassock. It's called a cassock.
And then the white.
It's called a surplice. Right, a surplice. S-U-R-P-L-I-C-E. Yeah.
Okay. So just with that, I'm just kind of curious, is that why did we wear those versus just regular street clothes?
Sure. So in our tradition, lay people, if they're singing in a choir, or deacons and priests will wear those are our standard vestments. Okay. When we are not saying for clergy, when we're not saying communion, and for the laity, more often than not, acolytes, choir members will wear those. Now, our acolytes wear what's called an alb. It's a symbol of their baptism. You're asking some very good, detailed questions, but those are the traditional vestments of both the laity and deacons and priests, not for bishops. It's why bishops, Barbara, you hit the nail on the head, why they look so different and grand. I want to show you. So what I brought with me are two books of the history of the Diocese of Vermont. They're both very old. But I want to show you. This is Bishop Van Dyke. And you will see here, he has the mitre on. He has the cope on, that's the vestment, and you've seen me in one like that. Now parish clergy, deans of cathedrals will wear them. You'll see, I don't know that you can see, he has a cross on, okay? He is not vested, you cannot see, he doesn't have his staff with him, nor does he have, you can see his ring. But he had all of those. They are historic pieces. I believe the diocese still has them, or his family, one or the other.
So when Vermont, when Bishop Eli resigned,
yes,
or retired,
the cross
was his. The rest was returned. or not returned, but he's still a bishop though,
He's
well,
always a bishop, right? He's still a bishop. Now, in today's world, those historic symbols of the diocese, some will stay with the family, right? Especially if he dies, and some will be returned to the diocese. Often, what is returned to the diocese is the ring and the cross. Sometimes dioceses used to have their own stick. It's called a crozier or a staff, because then every bishop used it, right? And that was the symbol of the diocese, and they would give it to the next bishop. We technically have one as a diocese, but now we give each bishop their staff, their own personal staff. It's as much proprietary and symbol of self as much as it is symbol of their office. They're usually crafted specifically for that bishop. Certainly, the cross and the crozier today and the ring, everything. My opinion on the matter is they're pretty
Expensive.
idiotically expensive, and I mean that. I know what everything cost for Bishop Shannon. She's in line with the rest of bishops. I know that because I was ahead of the search process, right, at the time of her consecration. And I found it so offensive, and I mean that I thought, if I ever become a bishop, I have my own cope, I will wear a wooden cross, and I'll go to a Tractor Supply and buy a shepherd's crook for $125 or $200. Idiotic, but that's my own personal opinion. I think our church, and I learned this in that time period, as much as bishops are the center of the church, a center of our teaching, they are no longer princes and princesses and hold that authority. They are a clergy person that brings faith, not brings looks. So that's my own personal opinion about it, and I'm sorry to interject that into this
you
conversation.
get my vote.
So I think we've gone too far. So, but that's why our bishops wear what they wear. It's why the church, St. John's owns all but two of my personal sets of vestments. I have a golden set that was given to me that's a white set. You'll see me wear it during Easter season on Christmas morning. That was given to me personally by the parish that raised me up for ministry and where I first served as a priest in Los Angeles, or in Santa Barbara, California. And the deep green one that you see me wear in the summer was given to me again as an ordination gift by a good friend of mine who's a deacon and a seamstress. All the other chasubles and stoles are the parishes that every priest wears here, right? They should. Mary Mansfield wore them, and they will, if we purchase two of them, they will stay here after I depart, and every priest should wear them. We have a green chasuble that's the lighter green that I wear in the winter because it's a little heavier, because we don't need to own those things as clergy.
But when you have a visiting priest, like when Bob Leopold has come, does he wear your vestments? Is that what he does then?
Yes, I ask him to. All right, it's kind of a given. I've done some supply if I'm on vacation, and I wear what that congregation has. The last congregation I served in Michigan, the same way. They had vestments, like they had a pink vestment. It's called a rose vestment. You wear 2 Sundays a year if you have them. Would have been last Sunday as one of them. And it's custom. Okay, it is not requirement. That is in no canon law. It is in nothing. In Rome, they are in canon law. You are given direct guidance from Rome as to what you will wear in church. We are not.
Were you given a cross on when you were ordained, Rick?
No, I was given a cross by my seminary when I graduated, and I wear that from time to time. But that's a different symbol of my office, that a difference between a bishop. They're given a cross. Priests are not. Priests are given a Bible at the time of their ordination. Bishops are as well, because we confess that that's where our faith lies, is in the gospel of Jesus
By the
Christ.
bishop of where you were ordained.
Correct. The bishop that ordains you gives you a Bible. And I do still have mine, and I bring it with me on pastoral visits. It also has a prayer book, so it's very nice. I take it with me on, and he signed it, which is also a good memory of that day. So, and what the prayer book says, and it doesn't define it. It just says this. It says, the deacon will now be, this is after they take their vows, and the bishop lays their hands on them, which is the symbol, and prays over them, says, send your Holy Spirit into blank and make them a deacon or a priest in your church. And the rest of the priests, when a priest is being ordained, lay their hands on that individual as well. And the bishop continues to pray a prayer of blessing over that newly ordained priest. As soon as that is done, or deacon, it says the newly ordained will be vested in the order of their office. Doesn't say you're vested in a chasuble and a stole. It doesn't mean you're only in a stole. Again, it's custom. You always are vested in a stole, like I said. That's the symbol, the external symbol of my office. Some dioceses do chasubles, some dioceses do not. The Diocese of Los Angeles, where I was ordained, wore chasubles, so I was ordained and then vested in that. In this diocese, it's gone back and forth. I've seen it. Some priests get ordained with a chasuble and some don't. It's theology, it's custom, but there's no requirements
Can I ask
other
an-
than a stole. Yes.
So the bishop in Vermont will ordain a new priest.
Correct. So
What are the other duties of the bishop?
of a bishop, no, they're great question. So as I said last week, there are, in the historic church, there are 7 sacraments, 7 outward and visible signs of inward and spiritual grace. That's a definition of a sacrament that comes from Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. And those are baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, marriage, confession, unction, meaning last rites, okay? And last rites is with oil, right? You hear the priest having oil to bless. And then ordination. The Episcopal Church has done a lot of different changes in that. What I will say, Barbara, is the bishop, I can do 5 of those, okay, as a priest. A deacon can do none of them because they are not ordained to do them. A bishop is able, 2 things they can do that I cannot is confirm laity into their faith, nor can I ordain. So a bishop's roles are liturgically that which is different of mine. Then they can ordain, and they're the only ones that can ordain. I cannot in any way ordain, nor can I do the service of confirmation. Those are defined
That's a
and
big
reserved.
difference.
It
Yeah,
is a bit.
Yeah, I'm surprised. So somebody, when you have a confirmation class, you cannot confirm those kids or
It's always in relationship with the bishop. So every confirmation course is designed around the bishop's visit. so that when the bishop comes, those people have been duly prepared.
Okay.
Correct.
So what else
Correct.
does the bishop do? I
That
mean,
they
oversee-
administer a diocese. So another thing that again is canonical is the bishop has authority over their clergy, their priests and deacons, in the role of what you think of obedience. Okay, the old terms, poverty, chastity, and obedience. Roman Catholic priests vow that. In the Episcopal Church, I vow to the bishop of I vow a vow of obedience. So if the bishop what that means is if the bishop says jump, guess what I have to do? Like
how high? Yeah.
how high? And that's both if Bishop Shannon said come to my office, that it's not a no.
Uh-huh.
It's a change everything you have on your calendar for that day. And I mean that, right? If she has the right to defrock and she has the responsibility to ordain. So when it comes to her clergy and over me and Serena and everybody else, that's her role with the clergy. You all, as laity, have not taken a vow of obedience to their bishop. And the way that says is we first, the sermon is preached. It's in a Eucharist. The sermon is preached. One. Then the priest or deacon is called to stand in front of the bishop, and they say, "This is your job." Okay, it's called the ordinal. Okay, it's ordinarying your life. What are you going to do? This is what you're called to do as a priest. And then they say, "Do you believe you are so called?" And we answer, "Yes, I believe I am so called." And then you answer vows. Will you do? And there's 7 of them. And one of them is, will you take direction from your bishop? That's a little pedestrian language, but it's essentially what it's saying. And all others who have authority over you, the bishop has authority over me. Will you take their guidance and lead? And that's what it means. How high will you jump for your bishop? And you say you do. You will. And after that,
Because
they
in
say
many
those
ways,
prayers that
in many
What's
ways,
that, Deb?
the bishop is the shepherd and you are the sheep.
correct.
You're one of the sheep.
That's right. The bishop is my pastor, as I am the pastor of St. John's. It's exactly right.
Does
She
she
is
have a
not.
service? Does she give service every week at the cathedral? Is that part of her job?
Her job is to go visit every parish in her diocese. So every Sunday, the diocesan bishop is to go visit a church every Sunday. So if she's not at St. John's, she's at the church in Middlebury or the church in Brattleboro, and so on and so forth. So that the laity can be confirmed. She has a responsibility, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated. A parish is under her charge, but they can't do what she says unless she demands it, and they can do some canonical things, right? It's extreme if something like that happens. If there's huge conflict in the parish, she can come in and tell the parish, the vestry, what it can do, but only in extreme circumstances. She can tell me what to do, but she cannot tell the laity in a congregation what to do. If a bunch of laity, like yourselves, say we want to form a church in Waterbury Center, you petition her, and then the diocesan convention, which she oversees. Everybody in those groups have to agree, and then a church is founded. If a church is no longer functioning, right? They don't gather for worship. They don't have money. They don't have a priest. She then has the responsibility to close them. Those are her only
Did you say they own the diocese owns the churches?
property. They
property.
they hold in trust the properties of the church. So, and not she personally, the diocese does. And the diocese has 3 entities that oversee them. And that is what's called the Standing Committee. They have literally the legal, nonprofit legal responsibility over the diocese and the diocesan functioning. They too, and then the Board of Trustees, a financial body because it's finance and it's property. So, and then there's the bishop. And so the 3 of them have the legal responsibility to hold property deeds. Okay.
Are you talking about the actual grass, the ground, and then the building is something different?
Nope, everything.
Property is all of it.
All real property. Correct. Real physical property.
That
they
would
do
include
not.
Buildings.
That includes buildings. And
okay.
So the congregation, I know it's difficult, but there's reasons for it. The congregation raises the funds, buys the property, pays for it, builds their own buildings, all of these kinds of things. We are responsible for them all. That is the diocese, holds the deeds. Now, why is this important?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple reasons. One, if you take a look, and we're not the only one. Methodists also, their upper structures hold their property deeds and technically own them, have authority over that property, even though, well, we won't get into the minutia of that. We then don't have to do the yearly, if a nonprofit owns a building, you have to be submitting X, Y, and Z to the state and to the feds. You have to be doing a whole bunch of things, okay? When the diocese holds everything in trust, all the property in trust, they are responsible, okay, for all of the legal pieces that go along with owning property by law, okay? They administer our 501c3 then, okay? We don't have to. There's a lot of pieces like that the vestry doesn't have to worry about because it's owned it's not owned by an entity that's local. It frees them up from doing a lot of that work so they can focus in on maintenance of buildings and the life of the congregation. Why is this a problem?
Takes care of insurance too, right? On the building and the grounds and
no, the parish pays for the insurance. Sorry. There's a dog, my mom's dog.
The diocese has a good deal going for them, I have to say. And I think Mary Stiles basically said it all when she talked about the rainy day where we had to go into our endowment money, and how she said, if we don't and we close, then the money goes to the diocese. So let's just use it and keep the church going and get it solvent. And I'm being very impressed with that analogy about the rainy day.
And that's exactly right. That's the negative piece, okay? Is that because they own it and say St. John's needs to close, it all goes back to the diocese. And the diocese has the responsibility to both sell it, but then they also have the they get all the proceeds from it. So
I'm going to just a minor correction, Barbara. It's not an endowment. Endowments have incredible restrictions on them, and we have gone to great lengths to try to avoid that. It's an operating reserve.
The operating reserve would go to the diocese if.
Thank you. Exactly what you were saying is correct.
Yeah.
Rick, what is Rock Point Commons, and how does she interact with that?
Sure. So the Rock Point Commons is fairly a recent development because there are three things that sit on this huge piece of property that we have called Rock Point. A school that is underneath the diocese but fully self-functioning. The property itself, right? The land that the diocese owns, and a camp and conference center, okay, that has buildings and its own executive director. But they all sit on the same land, and they're three different entities. So what they did is they pulled these three entities together for property pieces to deal with property and some use of it, but they can't walk into each other's property and tell them how to use it. So the school is self-functioning and can use its buildings the way it wants to. Same with the camp and conference center, and same as the bishop's house. They have a house for the bishop and a few other things. Her role is the ex officio chair of that body that oversees everything. Okay. So her only authority in that sense is over the land, okay, because the diocese holds the land, and any buildings that the diocese uses, her house, the diocesan offices. The bishop, whoever the bishop is, has no authority over the day-to-day use of the school or the management of the camp and conference center. It's somewhat similar to a congregation in that I, as the rector or rector, has authority over the use of property in an odd way, sole authority. However, I can do nothing with it, right? I can't sell it. I can't tell you to sell it. I can't tell the diocese. I can't do anything, but I do have authority over who can use it. It's really an odd connection. Though it's not fully parallel, she has full oversight of the property, but she can't tell anybody what to do with it. So this Rock Point Commons, we had three groups of entities, the diocese, the camp and conference center, and the school, almost working at cross purposes, living on the same land. So the goal was to pull those three entities together and try to do something unified and not at cross purposes. I tried to do that as succinctly as I know how to. I hope that helps.
So did that occur, of the three merging in that way?
Under Tom Ely.
Yeah,
he had the vision of that.
Yeah. And would you say that it's been, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So in your assessment, Rick, was that move successful? Has it done what it was intended?
Under Tom Ely it was. I think it's floundering a little bit right now. But the intention was correct. I do believe it. Yes.
Do you want to say anything more about why it's foundering now? You can, no is okay.
No.
Is it a historical piece of land, Rick, that because of the specialness of that geographical location, etc., that there are some special, tell us a bit about that.
There is. So the Rock Point property of 130, 120, I forget exactly, acres of lakefront property on Lake Champlain. If you don't know where it is, it abuts North Beach, Burlington North Beach, on the north side of it. They're our neighbor and Burlington High School. And you go down like you're going to the high school, and you take a very first right after, bye mom, right after that. And so it was given to the diocese by Bishop Hopkins, okay, in the 1850s, 40s, 60s, something like this. And it is in permanent trust, not trust. It is in permanent ownership that the deed written at that time does not allow the diocese which is diocesan convention that votes on these things, and then the bishop, the board of trustees, and the standing committee are not able. It is not possible for us to sell the property. Okay. So it is our property to manage and steward. That's why in the old days, and for many, many, many decades, probably a first century, it functioned beautifully. But as the world changed and they've got the camp and conference center on it, and people want to use it in different ways, and it's the pressure on the land because of just our changing society and people wanting to use 130 acres of beautiful property in the middle of Burlington. That property and its use has been in great flux. When I was president of the standing committee 10 years ago, we were working on that and how we can make it both profitable by doing permanent easements and permanent rent or, long-term rental agreements with the city of Burlington and other developers, that they're learning how to use it more effectively for both income, because we cannot sell it, but also access to it with permanent easements for wider use. Otherwise, it was like a cloister, literally. It's pretty much locked down. So they're really, like I said, the Commons has that intention, and therefore I really support it. Currently, it just needs a lot of TLC. Yes, Barbara.
How long is the bishop? Does Bishop Shannon rerun for bishop, or is she a bishop until the Bishop of the United States says retire or you're gone or something?
So so just like the rector, she has tenure the moment she is elected. So she can stay as long as she wants until her 72nd birthday.
Okay.
No different than a rector. Now, there are canonical ways of being relieved of your duties, but they're drastic.
But you have to go through your bishop then, the bishop, right, of the United States, Sean?
No, you have to go. So, okay. So you may remember last week I said the presiding bishop has no authority over diocese or theology of the Episcopal Church. He or she has no authority over the Diocese of Vermont, similar to our bishop going to visit every parish. He or she has the responsibility in their 9 years as presiding bishop. So that is the only bishop that does have a term limit. Has to go visit all of the dioceses of the Episcopal Church. So I don't know when he's going to come. It hasn't been announced, but he's brand new. He's in his first year. But if we got really mad at our bishop, similar to if you all got really mad at me, there are channels to get that person removed. For you all, it would be going through the bishop and some channels that way. Oftentimes, the way it's resolved is paying off a priest. We struggled with that one time back around the turn of the century, this current century. In the diocese, you have to have a diocesan vote of diocesan convention delegates to remove the bishop. It's happened once in the history of the Episcopal Church since 1789. And that was in about 1998 in the Diocese of New Jersey. It's horrible. You do not want that to happen. It's public, it's messy. So yeah. That's the only way to remove a bishop before their 72nd birthday. So let me go back to the bishops. There are four kinds of bishops. So you'll hear bishop diocesan. They are the head bishop of a diocese. Okay? That's the rector of a parish. Then you have two types of associates. Okay? One is called a suffragan bishop, or a bishop suffragan. And then you have an assisting bishop. Okay? An assisting bishop is like an assisting priest. They've been a bishop somewhere else. They're hired by the bishop diocesan to do a certain job of, right? Say it's too big of a diocese to have only one bishop, similar to large parish. So they run around and will confirm. They will have a special mission, we'll say, for outreach or for financial ministry, we'll say. And then there's a bishop, the suffragan. Okay, the difference between an associate, who is a hired a bishop, is a suffragan is elected by the diocesan convention of that diocese that is to function as a separate bishop that assists the diocesan in liturgical and administrative roles if requested. It's crazy, okay? And the diocesan has no authority over the suffragan, okay? Versus an assisting. If you're coming in as assisting, the bishop can fire you, right? No different than an assisting priest. The suffragan is not under the authority of the diocesan and has caused chaos and both strength throughout the history of the church.
So the bishop probably isn't happy if the convention puts in a
suffragan. Well, it requires the diocesan bishop to say, we're going to do a suffragan. Okay. Only this diocesan bishop we call, right? Ask diocesan convention to elect a suffragan. But the risk they run by doing that, instead of hiring or calling an assisting bishop, is really big, right? If you call an assisting bishop, it's no different than me. I get to interview that person and make a decision whether I think that person is good for St. John's. In an assisting bishop, it's directly parallel. A suffragan is elected to do a completely separate job, and they can do it with or without the support of the diocesan bishop. In our current, and that used to happen, okay? And it caused chaos.
Oh, I bet.
In today's world, it doesn't. They do serve as an assisting bishop and work collaboratively with the diocesan bishop. And they get that. Every suffragan understands that today. In the old day, it didn't. There's a fourth kind of bishop. Gotta run, Roger. You know this about bishops, I know. And you're very well versed. It's called a bishop coadjutor, COAJOURT, coadjutor, something like that, coadjutor. And that is the bishop that is to succeed the diocesan. For example, in a big diocese like New York or Boston, okay, that can financially afford and need, right? They got 180 parishes. The bishop technically has to visit every parish every year. That's obviously not realistic. So they would call near their time of retirement, okay, they would call the diocese to elect their next bishop, head bishop, okay, that will succeed the diocesan bishop. And then they get the assistance of a bishop. They train that person. It's kind of, you put the training wheels on a new bishop, right? Teach them how to be a bishop. Teach them the role of being a bishop. It's asking the diocese to choose your successor so that person can be trained before your retirement. Okay? Mm-hmm. A suffragan bishop does not ever succeed the diocesan. So that's another big difference. So if you're the suffragan and the diocesan leaves, you just sit there. You're still the suffragan bishop of a diocese. You have the diocesan bishop has no authority over you, and you do not become the diocesan bishop. Now, how do we elect bishops? Deb was a part of the last one. we put together, we do a little, this is the diocesan leadership pulls together a little search committee. The search committee suggests a number of priests or a bishop from another diocese, put them forward on we call it a slate, right? Here's 3 bishops, 3 people that I suggest we suggest you choose from to be our next bishop. And the whole convention of the diocese, meaning three laity from every parish and every priest and deacon in the diocese, as Deb remembers, comes together and we vote. It's complicated, so I'm not going to go there. It's ridiculously complicated. But we vote, and voila, we have an ex-bishop. That's how you get a bishop diocesan, a bishop suffragan, and a bishop coadjutor. Assisting bishops are usually retired people that live in that diocese, right? That the head bishop hires to do a specific job.
This sounds like it is all just inherited, that if you were starting
Correct.
from scratch and said, let's organize a new church, you wouldn't set it up this way.
Correct. The Lutheran Church, okay? The Lutheran Church is exactly what you know, Barbara, and what makes sense. Our system doesn't make sense. Remember, we come from the Church of England, from the High Middle Ages. Nothing made sense in those days for us today, but that's what we still do.
Because it's coming down more directly from the Roman Catholic Church, where the other Protestant churches were a total breakaway and
Total breakaway.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. You take a pastor in the Lutheran Church and say this guy or a woman is a great bishop or a great pastor. We're going to then elect that person, right, to be a bishop. And they're a bishop for a term of 8 years or 4 years. And it can be
6. I think it's 6 years.
Something like that. And then guess what? They're done. Then they get to go back and do something else with their ministry, not in the Episcopal Church. Yeah. You're elected by a diocese, made the bishop of one of 3 kinds, right? And you're there. You got tenure.
And if you're unhappy with your pastor we did have one pastor that should have been just a fireman. That's where his interest was, and it wasn't working out. And the church it's the church's duty to have him moved or her moved someplace else. We asked the bishop for help, and the bishop at the time said he couldn't help. So then the church said to the bishop, well, we won't be able to support the synod, which is the diocese.
Yep.
Because that's voluntary in the Lutheran Church. And so then the bishop, seeing this large congregation withholding funds, said, well, on second thought, I think I can help you. And he did. And we ended up with a wonderful pastor. But, just sometimes the match to the church isn't a good one. And
correct.
It happens. Yeah.
It does. And in the Episcopal Church, if you call a priest, a rector, and it's not a good match, it happens more often than I think we want. 25 to 30% of the time, they're not good calls.
Really?
And so usually both sides, right, both the priest and the parish know that it's not working.
Yeah.
So they find ways there's usually conflict involved, but they usually find ways to end the pastoral relationship by helping the priest find another job. I mean, it's literally, if everybody is okay, time for you to go find another job, we all would be happy. If they can't figure that out, and a priest, because they have tenure, there's no way to push them out. There is, like I said, a complicated way, and it is in writing. And Wendelin, when you've seen my letter of agreement, right, you may have seen it at the very back. It has a very clear delineation of steps that would go through. Every clergy person in the diocese, Zarina as well, okay, had that same process, that we can do it. But it's really complicated. We as a parish cannot withhold funds from the bishop, but we can make their life very difficult. Both the priest, if the priest needs out, they go to the bishop and say, help me. I need to get out. This is not good for my soul. It's not good for theirs. That's the healthy priest. When the non-healthy priest can't figure that out and the vestry goes to the bishop, it gets really, really messy. This happened at St. John's.
Right.
Okay. Around the year 2000.
Yeah.
Deb, you may remember this.
It
Really?
was messy. Oh, very messy.
Very
Ah.
messy. And Bishop, her name was Jody Dower Cardasis. She was the priest at St. John's from 1993 to 2000 or 2001. And it got pretty bad. And the vestry wrote the bishop twice. And then a group of 30 parishioners, and then this got together on their own. They didn't tell anybody. They wrote a letter to the bishop. It gets really bad, right? This is really not healthy for the institution. They can't talk to one another. And right. And so when a priest and a parish don't get along, right? And that just happens. You sit down and you say, okay, what do we need to do? Like, right, to me, maybe I'm too healthy for this, right? You just sit down and you say, we can't do this. This isn't healthy.
How do you resolve something like that? How did they resolve that?
You can do a number of different things. First, the bishop at that point, at the request, if the bishop accepts a request of a vestry to have a priest removed, there's a whole bunch of steps you have to go through, but it can happen. They can encourage the clergy person and help them find another job. Like, right? They can help pull some strings at another parish.
Did that work? Did that work? I mean, did you?
I don't think so. Yes, it did work, but the parish was about to pay her, which is the next thing, right? Give her X number of
severance of some sort. Yeah.
Right, severance of some sort, right. And that's usually what happens. Is a severance is given with ultimatums, right? You take this or you go, or we're really going to get on the bishop and he's going to remove you.
Mm-hmm.
So because they can't, the vestry cannot remove a rector. They can remove other forms of parish clergy, but they cannot remove.
Well, it's similar to getting rid of a school teacher.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's very similar to any tenured person.
Any
right?
tenured person, yeah.
Correct. And again,
I just need, it's 1:25.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
And so I'm just wondering about the time of this length of this meeting, because I have another meeting and
we were supposed to be done 20 minutes ago. We're having a lot of fun, I think, conversation.
Absolutely. It's just that the day is rapidly leaving.
Oh, of course. If you have any other questions about what a diocese does, we've talked obviously primarily about a bishop. You've heard me use the terms of two other bodies, the trustees, which Wendelin, you would be the perfect candidate for. It oversees our finances. What are our finances? It includes our real property and our financials. Both the diocesan, we have a diocesan unit trust is what it's called. I think, Wendelin, you remember that. It's a gathering of all the parishes' reserve or endowments, if they wish, vestries approved, and it's worth about $29 million. So there's reasons, right, to pull that unit trust to pool money for better investments. And then there's this body called the Standing Committee, and they have legal responsibility. It's also ecclesiastical responsibility. If a bishop isn't there if they don't have a bishop, the Standing Committee is we run the diocese. I mean, literally, I'm no longer on it. We have the Episcopal authority to make all the decisions that a bishop would. And then the only other body I'll talk about is it's called Bishop's Commission on Ministry. And that is, so James wants to be a priest. That body, that Commission on Ministry, sits with him, listens with him, prays with him, and supports him in his journey. If that body says no, we don't think this person is a priest or a deacon, then they tell the bishop that, and that person's not going to be ordained, most likely. If they say, yes, we think this person has a call for ordained ministry, the bishop usually says yes, because they are the counsel of advice to the bishop for those who are to be ordained. You asked about the role of the bishop. Has that much of a role? The bishop tells a person if they can or cannot be ordained. But there are those other bodies, right, that get involved with that. Standing committee approves that as well. So those are the three bodies I want to talk about outside of a bishop.
That's gonna be a huge loss for St. John's when he goes on his little.
Well, he's going to do online seminary. So for the most part, we will see him. He may have to go out to California, 2 or 3 times a year. It's a seminary in the Bay Area.
And in Panama.
Yeah, and he may be in Panama. We see him online most Sundays. But yeah, so those are the 3 primary bodies, elected bodies outside of. And my phone's going to die here.
Okay.
So, any other questions about a diocese, a bishop? I hope this has been at least interesting enough to stay on for 20 extra minutes.
Next week you will
talk about a parish and St. John's. And if you wanted to read this history, and there's another history, I bet it's underneath here, on the Diocese of Vermont, I have them in the office. This one was written in 1957. And so it's very old now. And the other one is actually a history of each congregation. So if you want to see the different congregations of the diocese, some are closed now. St. John's is in its infancy because it was written in 1973. We were not even 20 years old at the time that was written. But you'll get some, if you're interested. They're actually in the parish office right now. I left them available if you want to see them.